Hey everyone, it's Tali from the AstroTwins, and I'm so starstruck and excited to be here with Patrick Watson of PatrickWatsonAstrology.com. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, thank you for
Hi.
having me.
Oh, yes, I'm so glad you're here. And well, the reason why we are just so starstruck by you is, you're kind of a wizard. You have this real knack for connecting historical trends to what's happening in the stars. And I've loved watching that. I learn, unbeknownst to you, I learned so much from you about that. And I think I'm so excited that you're here. For those of you who don't know Patrick, um, he's a professional astrologer, obviously, who practices a blend of modern and Hellenistic astrology, which is really cool that you do both of those. People sometimes go into one or the other, but I know you're a Libra sun, so you got to stay right on both sides of the scales.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And you say you're passionate about planetary cycles, right? And the historical references, and also the exoteric astrological correspondences. You definitely are a prolific creator of astrology content. You have a lot up there on your site. And I absolutely love your articles, your videos, and as you say, your savage memes. You do make a savage meme. What is it in your chart that brings out the meme maker in you, do you think?
uh, I think, well, I've been told I have kind of a wicked sense of humor, and so, like, I'm not always terribly charitable in my humor, and I think I attribute that to having Mercury retrograde conjunct Pluto in Scorpio by 1 degree.
Oh,
So I have a very, yeah, Plutonian Mercury, and I I swing for every joke I can, even if it doesn't land. So
I
yeah,
found
I
humor in
like.
that, but I also was born with Mercury retrograde in Scorpio
Oh, okay. So we got
myself.
two of us.
So yeah, maybe that's why we got into this weird profession. Because I know you told me that you went to music school. I went to art school. So what? How did you get into astrology? I'd love to hear that. You know.
Well, my mother was into astrology, and she managed to get. She made sure to get the birth times of me and my brothers, and she had a massive book collection. I remember I first read my first horoscope probably at age 7 in the Reader's Digest, and I just thought
Wow.
that was fascinating. But I I didn't know which sun sign I was. I didn't know if I was really a Libra or a Scorpio because I was born right at the dividing date. So I asked my mother, and she happened to know because she took down my birth date and birth time, and so she explained to me that I actually was a Libra sun and I was almost a Scorpio sun, but not quite. But it hardly matters because I have the moon in Scorpio and like tons of other planets in Scorpio. So I wanted to know what my chart said around maybe the age of 12, and
Wow.
my mom read my chart to me, and I think it was very interesting how she had to navigate explaining Scorpio to a 12-year-old. Yeah. Uh,
How the
so
birds and bees talk came from a
right,
different
yeah,
angle,
yeah,
right?
exactly. There you go. Yeah.
Hey kid,
Um,
let's talk. Yeah.
so I devoured every astrology book she had, and I went online and I found even more astrology content, and then I discovered other astrologers were talking on a MySpace group back in the days of
Oh wow.
MySpace, and that's where I met my mentors, Chris Brennan and Nick Dagan Best, and I that's how I was introduced to Hellenistic astrology as well as the kind of almost neo-Babylonian exoteric approach of Nick Dagan Best, where he really focuses on the sort of unfiltered sort of planetary cycle correlations, irrespective of any kind of cultural overlay.
Mhm.
So I feel like I'm very much I'm kind of their astrological love child. Um, and it's good. I sort of incorporate both of their approaches, and so uh, you know, I, I was only about 17, and I've been studying astrology for years. I started blogging about astrology around 21 while I was going to school for music, and I was trying to decide between the two very responsible careers of being a musician or being an astrologer. and yeah, I couldn't really
We-
decide, but I ended up just I know, right? Yeah. Well,
I
on the
love
one
it.
hand, I can make a lot of money. On the other hand, I can make no money as well. Yeah. So it wasn't yeah,
Pick
it
a
wasn't.
lane, either
It
one.
was
Yeah.
yeah, it wasn't a decision about money. Obviously, I did not go into a career for money. But in any case, I enjoy what I do. I used to be a music teacher, and that was one of the ways I was able to make money through my degree in music, specialized in vocal music, choral music, and I so I do I did all that, but what I thought was kind of interesting is that in some ways I felt like I wasn't really studying two different disciplines. In many
Yeah, the
ways, when I was studying
chords and the
astrology,
difference
when I was
between, yeah, right?
right when I was studying music, I in a weird way I was studying the sort of harmonic structures which you
Yeah,
kind of see repeating in nature as well. So I think music is what astrology sounds like.
I love
Um,
that. Totally get
uh,
that too. Yep.
so yeah, I'll have to slap that on a t-shirt or something. Um,
There's your next savage meme.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So so that's so eventually I found myself at at 29, I'd already done a ton of blogging, but I kind of I guess I decided to sort of make it official and really accept being a more professional astrologer. And so yeah, I spoke at the ISAR 2016 conference, and I've been in a lot of different print newspapers, and I was featured in the Wall Street Journal, in
Oh, cool.
Washington Post. There's a blip of me on Fox and New York Times, and so for as in many ways it was very, very strange, because I was a music teacher by day and
Yeah.
like an astrology teacher by night, and I wasn't really like I was kind of in the closet in some ways at work, about being an astrologer, and it's like I'm just kind of doing my day job like as a music teacher here on the side, and then on the other I'm like being quoted in Washington Post about Hillary's birth time. It's it's very surreal. But yeah,
I'm
now I'm
sure it
here.
is. Yeah.
Now now I feel like I've kind of taken the plunge, and here I am doing it full time, doing my thing.
And creating some really amazing tools too. I mean, I love on your website you have so many great like teaching like classes, and your videos, you just go into these complex spreadsheets that you've created for people.
Right.
And is there anything new that you have that you're working on right now before we dive into talking about Jupiter in
Well,
2020? Yeah.
um, I I think I have potentially the idea to, well, one, I'm going to probably start with regular videos again. I've taken a bit of a hiatus from that, but um, I've been thinking about potentially compiling my first book, as well as making a proper course, because I don't really have like classes that I've made, but a lot of people have been requesting that, and so it just takes a bit of time and effort to set that up, because I'd want to make sure I do a really good job of it. I wouldn't want to half-ass it. So, if I, sorry if I can, sorry, I shouldn't
We're
say.
allowed to say that on the
Okay, all
STARSTRUCK
right,
Summit. We're a
okay,
little rock and roll lightning
all
bolt
right,
over here,
okay,
so
all
yeah.
right. Yeah, just want to make sure that's okay.
Yes, children watching. Uh,
All those children watching.
well, it might have been you at age 7, right? So you
Right.
never know.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah. Well, actually, it's kind of funny, because when I was teaching high school choir, um, I had a couple of students who actually discovered my videos online, which must have been quite the discovery for them. Like, wait a sec,
Right,
that's my music teacher.
right.
And it's funny, because I had one student come up to me after class, and they kind of wanted to, like, I don't know, I guess they were kind of trying to make fun of me, because they knew that this would be kind of a strange thing to get out. And I was just like, well, I keep my job separate. That's the last we have to really talk about this. But then I had another student who wanted to talk about like the videos, and it turns out they wanted to know more about their chart. And I was like, I really can't do that as your teacher. I'm not,
Yeah,
I'm only here to
wonderful.
teach about music. I'm not here to teach anything about astrology. So
Although,
sorry.
conjunctions and
Yeah.
trines and squares could all, sort of probably
Yeah,
align with
I,
various chords and harmonics and things, right? In
right.
their
Yeah,
own
maybe.
way.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there, but I wouldn't, I felt it was important, very imperative really to stick very closely to my
Keep the
job.
divide. Well, on
Yeah.
the note of all things scholarly, I'm really excited because you are going to talk to us today about Jupiter in the 2020s. Because, we were talking a little earlier about how there's a lot of heaviness around the new decade. Like people are really, obviously we have a lot of intense things happening, down here on Earth, whether you know about astrology or not, as well
Right.
as up in the skies. The outer planets are doing all kinds of things. But, Jupiter is going to give us a little sparkle, a little glow up. But, why did you feel that was necessary? I mean, how are you feeling about kind of the weightiness of the Pluto and Uranus returns of the US and everything,
Yeah, I mean, understandably, there's been I mean, I feel like just even since the Uranus Pluto square, of the
Yeah.
2010s, I think people have been apprehensive. I think even in denial. I remember one point, I remember a time back in 2006 where people were like, "Oh, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal," and then it like comes by and it's like, "Okay, this was a huge deal." Um, I I have, been looking at these transits with some trepidation for a very long time, and I released a video, almost 2-hour video on the Saturn-Pluto conjunction called "Sunshine, Rainbows, and Daisies." A bit, like, well,
A
because
little irony there. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's a very tongue-in-cheek title, but it has to do with the idea that, because a lot of people say that we shouldn't fearmonger about these transits, and I agree. I don't think you should fearmonger. On the other hand, I think sometimes we almost go to the other extreme where maybe we don't talk more frankly about some of the challenges
How
associated with these kinds of
exciting.
transits.
Pluto, the ruler of the unconscious, and,
Right.
Saturn,
Saturn,
the
the
lord of karma, are
task.
meeting up on January 12th. Woohoo!
Yeah, it's I mean, it's that's definitely one of the most austere and kind of alarming planetary cycles out there, and it's coincident with some of the hardest things that our species has had to deal with. And so I tried to treat that with, I think, the kind of respect it deserves, without kind of unduly making people like frightened or scared. And so and sometimes I've been accused of like, fear mongering, and I don't want to fear monger. So I thought, well, then, while everyone's talking about, the Saturn Pluto conjunction and the Uranus return of the United States, and the, Neptune return of the Civil War, and other kind of concerning things, I figured I would talk about Jupiter. And Jupiter's a fun guy, and
Yes.
I think Jupiter brings some levity to the proceedings, and so I thought I would try to be a voice for some of the cooler, better things that we might be able to expect from the 2020s. And the reason why I was really drawn to this, in addition to that, was the fact that Jupiter just happens to be making conjunctions to every planet beyond it within a 5-year period.
And
And
that's
so I thought
rare.
that
That's very rare, right?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, maybe. Well, I think it's
Well, I
more
guess
likely.
Jupiter's cycle, but yeah.
Well, yeah, it's going to be more likely when Uranus and Neptune and Pluto are kind of in the same neighborhood.
Mhm.
But still, I thought it was still kind of a remarkable thing that in the first 5 years of the 2020s, Jupiter will be kind of taking this tour of the solar system, and it
And
will
for
be
those
kind
of
of
you who are a little newer to astrology, because I know we have a range of people listening, Jupiter is that whatever Jupiter touches, it kind of brings some sparkle and joy and uplift, at least some
glow up.
optimism to a glow up. Exactly. There's no better way to say it. It is the galactic glow stick, isn't it?
Yeah, right. Yeah. And it'll be really interesting too, because, we'll get a really clear example kind of what the combination of Jupiter is with each of these planets. Like you said, Jupiter kind of, it makes grand whatever it touches. It makes it more epic and more kind of royal or majestic, and it ennobles, the planets that it comes into conjunction with. So if you know the basic natures of the planets, then you can combine those themes, and you can understand what kinds of things will be in the zeitgeist at the times that those transits are happening. So I will be looking back at the previous times that these cycles have happened in order to make projections about what kinds of things we can expect to see on a more general level, as well as in particular charts, which will be hit hard by some of these transits, that will give us an idea of what to potentially expect from, this early part of the 2020s, at least.
I'm so excited to hear that, because, it's true, at any time in history, at any point in history, there are wars going on, there is destruction, and yet we as a human species do, we find those moments, even the darkest hours,
it doesn't,
we find that Jupiter, right?
Yeah, well, and that's actually a really important point. These things are always happening, but it's only at these, specific junctures with, especially the hard aspects, the conjunctions, when two planets are opposite across from each other in the zodiac with 90 degrees, in a square with each other, that, that these things really kind of come to light, and that they're more just sort of present in the zeitgeist, in the kind of collective conscious.
And I know, so the first ones are happening very soon. I mean, in 2020 with Jupiter and Pluto, right? So what do you make of that? We've got 3 dates. I know, April and November for that this year.
Yes. So April 5th is the date of the first one when it goes exact at 24 degrees of Capricorn. And then when Jupiter goes retrograde and conjoins it again, it will do that on June 30th, 2020 at 24 Capricorn again. And then Jupiter will make its final pass, its final conjunction with Pluto at 22 degrees of Capricorn on November 13th, 2020.
3 times next year.
3 times, yeah. So 2020 will definitely be a very, in addition to being a very Saturn-Pluto year, also a very Jupiter-Pluto year, which is kind of odd. There's like, the Jupiter principle is empowered at the same time that the Saturn principle is really being empowered, right? As well. Yeah, and there's of course almost a whole other topic unto itself, as far as understanding how each part of that co-presence relates to, the other components within it. So, but yeah, with Jupiter-Pluto, one of the I actually just recently wrote an article about this. Jupiter-Pluto cycles seem to be coincident with times when really amazing and fundamental discoveries are kind of made about the kind of origins of the universe, and it expands the vistas of discovery to extremely large and extremely small scales. So, for example, there were Jupiter-Pluto aspects active in the charts of Georges Lemaitre, who was born at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and he discovered that the universe was expanding at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and from that is how we have the theory of the Big Bang, of how the universe began. So we really, there was kind of an insight that was reached into a kind of a fundamental feature of, our universe. And then the father of microscopy, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, I think is how you say it. He was born at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and he discovered the first bacterial life, microscopic life forms at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. Wow. So it was the insight into it was the vistas of discovery opening up into the extremely impossibly large scales of the cosmos, and impossibly small scales of of the microscopic world. And so that's in keeping with Pluto's associations with extremes.
As well as kind of the hidden things that aren't visible, and
right,
Jupiter, the
yeah,
things that are like seen yet
right.
we don't
Well,
understand
and
always.
even the discovery of Pluto itself figures into the Jupiter-Pluto
Huh.
cycle. When the observatory where it was discovered was built, that was at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and the girl who named Pluto, she was born at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, and then the planet itself was discovered not long. It was actually the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction happened after it was discovered, but it was kind of as Pluto was entering the popular consciousness. This is when you start getting the dog from Disney named Pluto, and sort of
Right.
the cultural it's sort of like Jupiter welcoming Pluto into the culture.
Oh my God.
But
Fascinating.
yeah, so there's some interesting things there. I think that the fact that it's happening in Capricorn this time, I think, indicates that the it'll it might be a bit more of a bummer this time. We might be there might be an insight into a kind of limit to what we can find out, or even literally discovering like an edge or walls to the universe.
Where we have to abide by the terrestrial laws of climate change and the
Right,
not
yeah.
never
There's
ending
something, yeah, no, exactly.
finite natural resources
Right, yeah.
even.
So the vistas of discovery will extend to the impossibly large and the impossibly small, but it will be in such a way that what we discover will be more Saturnian. It'll be something about a limit or a boundary or an edge, something that we can't cross past. So
I almost wonder if it'll ignite kind of a movement of sustainability, or even just people realizing that, I have enough. This is enough. Where does where it's always like
yeah,
amassing more and more and
right.
more. Could it be that?
Yep. I mean, maybe. The other side to Jupiter Pluto, which I've noticed, which I wrote another huge article about, is its connection to philanthropists. The charts of philanthropists and giant charities which are made, and some of the most successful companies on the planet, big banks, and the sort of Jupiter. Because Jupiter is kind of, if we were to kind of ascribe I suppose, a political philosophy to Jupiter, it might be the aristocracy, the kind of aristocratic, where it's sort of high-minded, more ennobled kind of way of thinking. But then conjunct Pluto kind of brings it to a sort of extreme edge. And so I think what that amounts to is the ultra wealthy. So for example,
Right.
Bill Gates was born at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction.
Let's see.
One of
Of
the wealthiest
course
men
he
on the planet.
was. How fascinating. Huh.
Right, Warren Buffett was born at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. Bill Gates started Microsoft at a Jupiter-Pluto opposition. He started the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the wealthiest charity in the world, at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction. He left Microsoft to focus on that full time at a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction.
Oh
So,
my God.
so like you kind of see this ongoing theme of like, massive amounts of wealth being put towards sometimes good causes, like through charity, but also sometimes through uh, enterprises which are designed to kind of try to control the political system through the means of concentrated wealth, influencing public decisions. So
Absolutely.
there's that kind of Pluto dynamic of kind of extreme control. Like it can be extremely good, and it can also be sort of extreme in a more negative sense, more
Well, I think,
controlling,
Jeff
manipulative.
Bezos is born on January 12th, the day of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction.
Exactly.
And
So the
it's
Jupiter,
just everyone's
yeah,
watching him to see. And
yeah,
there's something with China as well, like the birth chart of China
yes.
that connects
No,
to this, right?
that's great that you brought him up, because yeah, he's definitely going to be someone to watch, because the Jupiter Pluto conjunction will be happening on his sun, as well as the Saturn Pluto conjunction. So I feel like he'll definitely be. Oh, by the way, Amazon was created at a Jupiter Pluto conjunction in 1994. So
His parents' garage, he claims. What was,
right,
yeah.
or
Watch what's
something.
going on in your garage, parents. And if you're having a kid on April 5th, June 30th, or November 12th, they might save the world.
So, I think the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction will definitely have some interesting implications for big business, and Amazon would be no exception, especially considering how personally that hits Jeff Bezos' chart for sure.
Yeah.
So that is Jupiter and Pluto.
Yes.
That's a little taste.
Nothing minor going on there, folks. Just got to save the world philanthropically. Big decade dreams. Okay.
Right. Yeah. So because that's for the beginning of the new 13-year or 12-year Jupiter-Pluto cycle until the next conjunction, which happens 12 years later. So that is kind of like a kickoff in a sense. So Jupiter conjunct Saturn occurs on December 21st, 2020 at 0 degrees of Aquarius. And so this is definitely a more, I think this is definitely more of an opportunity for hope, I would think, because I think that it means, because the Saturn principle is, is to control and to regulate, more sensibly. Saturn's the adult. Jupiter is the party animal, but Saturn is the adult. And so, in traditional astrology for centuries, astrologers have been looking at the conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn to extrapolate, information about the kind of general socio-political economic organization of those societies. And so what's really fascinating about this particular conjunction is that this is the first one of the next, like, we're entering a 200-year Jupiter-Saturn cycle of where it's only happening in air signs. So we're coming out of the past 200 years where Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions happened in earth signs.
Right.
And so now we're moving into the air quality. And so I think the way that we can understand this, and I think the way we're already kind of seeing this because of the one, like, it's weird when it's in between two periods, there'll be like one in an air sign, then one in an earth sign.
So is that Libra one in like,
there was the Libra one in the 80s. Yeah, exactly.
I think, or 80.
That was like, because that was the first one in an air sign, but this is the first one where it'll continue being an air sign.
Continue because it was in earth signs, right? For a couple of centuries. Yeah.
So the way that we can understand that is, I think the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions in the earth signs was all about the rise of industrialized societies, which relied on oil and coal and fossil fuel extraction. Everything was about utilizing the materials of the earth, and that really, I think, is captured by the fact that Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions were happening in earth signs. But now, with that first Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Libra in 1991, it wasn't long after that we kind of got like the internet.
Right,
and,
all the airwaves.
And,
I think PIP was
exactly, So it seemed like we were kind of on the way to something new, but then in 2000, Jupiter conjoined Saturn one last time for one last hurrah in Earth sign. So we're coming to the end of that final Earth sign. I feel like that's
right. That was May 2000, I think.
Right. Yeah. So exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've geeked out a little too, but I'm not a historian like you are.
Thank you. No, that's great. It's
actually,
great to point that out.
You have been someone who's inspired me to do that with your approach to astrology. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's very flattering.
Mm-hmm.
So Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions will now be occurring in air signs, and I think what this kind of portends for the next 200 years is that we're going to reorient our socio-political economic systems around the exchange of information, because it's air signs. So I think everything's going to become more digital, and I think more decentralized. And I think especially since we're seeing the rise of things like cryptocurrency and blockchain, and all of those kinds of innovations would potentially enable society to organize itself in a more decentralized way. And I think the very notion of air is that it's diffuse and that
Oh, right.
just blows about, and but it's kind of invisible too, so we'll be sending the signals through the air in a sense, where it'll all be about communication and the exchange of information and ideas, and that those will be really the things that power society. I mean, we've already talked about society in that way. We're in a information economy.
We are, and
That's
that's where the currency, like, do you think that without this earth influence, we won't necessarily need tangible things that we can touch and hold in order to feel their value?
yeah. We will. Yeah, I will get a little more into that with Uranus in Taurus, because that's another planet Jupiter will be meeting up with.
Oh yes,
So
that's gonna be an interesting one. The thing about Jupiter and Saturn together in air sign is, like, there have been a lot of cities talking about upzoning and, like,
yeah,
allowing new floors to be, higher buildings to be built, and with resources kind of shrinking. I mean, I think we may actually even see cities needing to reorient themselves, and that
right.
airspace becoming more valuable than land.
Right.
It's
We will.
possible.
Well, it also makes more sense too, as as climate change affects affects the coastlines. We're going to see a massive influx of people coming from the coast, going into the inland. We're going to see sort of more migration, and I think that it'll be to kind of people's benefit in some ways to be in smaller communities where they can rely on more of their local resources, because then that cuts down on
True.
pollution and sort of all of the hidden costs of having giant metropolises. So I think this is going to be another part of the air mutation, of
Oh,
the Jupiter Saturn cycles, because
communal
it kind of,
living and having to sort of build
because
those
it will
micro
yeah
communities.
but
Yeah.
it will still be digital. Like, it'll be sort of like
Oh,
we'll almost be breaking down the kind of rural urban divide, when people just kind of will be almost existing in their own nodes but connected to each other, digitally, and being able to kind of, and it's going to look a bit different than
I know it's
what
going to
we're
be
kind of used
really
to.
interesting. Forget about
uh
hoarding your land, people,
right.
or just put a commune in your backyard. Get ready.
Right, you have your own micro farm.
Yeah, virtual
But
commune. Yes.
yeah. So those are some of the cool things to expect from Jupiter Saturn. Jupiter will be conjunct Neptune at 23 degrees of Pisces on April 12th, 2022.
Wow.
So now Jupiter and Neptune, I think, is probably one of my more favorite cycles to analyze, because it just comes through in such vivid ways. Neptune is the planet of visions and illusions and dreams. And so in a very practical sense, in our society, Neptune is cinema. Neptune is the escapism of entertainment, of the mainstream trends that we just kind of jack into and
Yeah.
like zone out. Uh, the it's our cinematic spectacle. So, for example, it was at the last Jupiter Neptune conjunction in Aquarius that Disney bought Marvel, and then the Avengers movies, as the Marvel Cinematic Universe has been established. That really, the main phase is, what's really weird is that Disney and Marvel themselves label their films as being part of phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3 and phase 4, and those phases actually correspond directly with the quarter cycles of the Jupiter Neptune cycle.
Wow.
So every phase, so literally,
No
they said
way.
the end of phase 1 was the Jupiter Neptune square, and then the end of phase 2 was the Jupiter Neptune opposition. The end of phase 3 was Jupiter. So we just got to
Right. Did
this
we just have
exactly.
phase 3 in 2019 with the three
Yeah,
Jupiter
so
Neptune squares?
exactly. So
Oh,
yeah, this Jupiter Neptune square this year was all about the biggest movie, most profitable movie ever made, practically, Avengers Endgame. It's this giant,
oh my God.
cinematic spectacle of, seeing all of these these visions brought to life, the imaginations of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, coming to life in this completely unprecedented way, in this just massive, just, amazing,
That is
cinematic
Jupiter giving a
spectacle.
serious glow
Exactly.
up to
Yeah,
imaginative, escapist Neptune.
exactly.
But they were
You
like
got it.
squaring. It's so interesting that at a square it pushed that. So the conjunction is
Absolutely.
going to be really interesting.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so what I think will be really interesting to watch out for in Jupiter and Neptune, uh, Neptune's entrance into Pisces has really coincided with the rise of streaming. And I think it's funny that we refer to consuming entertainment as now binging and streaming. It's all watery. And then
And
even
addictive kind of words
yeah,
of Neptune.
and
Yeah.
and even the shows that are popular, like Stranger Things and the
Euphoria.
OA, and
Yeah.
that they all have to do with kind of the idea of like parallel worlds and like different timelines and like kind of imagining like a slightly different version of our own reality.
Oh my
Neptune,
God.
this is the imagination of a completely synthetic or unreal scenario.
And yet
So
I'm very glad that because Jupiter and Neptune are the co-rulers of Pisces, so they're meeting up in their native sign there. What do you make of
so
that?
so this is the last aspect, the last like really hard aspect that Jupiter makes to Neptune while it is in Pisces. So I think that is really going to be the last final hurrah of this form of entertainment.
Mm.
um it'll be like a colossal send off, a cinematic spectacle for the ages. The movies that come out in that year will be astonishing classics of this era. I think we'll look back on the Neptune and Pisces period as this wonderful one for films. And it's interesting because when we look back at the other time that Neptune was in a Jupiter ruled sign, Sagittarius,
Hmm.
that was from 1970 to 1984. So that's when we had the first Star Wars trilogy, and that's when we had E.T. and that was
I was
when
born, I had my childhood through all of
yeah.
that. I
So
got Sun conjunct
exactly,
Neptune
it
and
was
Sag. Yep.
it was the first time that people used the word blockbuster to describe these giant cinematic spectacles of that age, and that's when IMAX was invented, and that's when
And movies were such a big deal. I mean, because
yeah.
we only
So
had, I was born in the 70s. We had black and white TVs, and then
right.
the movie was, the theater was that ultimate escape arena.
Exactly. So Neptune and Sagittarius, the Neptune Sagittarius period was really like the ultimate period of like the adventure blockbuster. This is the age of like Indiana Jones and
Yeah.
Han Solo, dominating the multiplex. And it's so
Totally
funny
agree.
that now, when Neptune first ingressed into Sagittarius, that's when Lucasfilm was founded. And then when Neptune entered Pisces in 2012, that was when Disney bought Lucasfilm. So that's when they bought Star Wars. And then we got and the prequels, actually the prequel trilogy also happened when Neptune first entered Aquarius. So we kind of see like these new phases of this franchise,
So
as
interesting.
Neptune goes through these different signs.
And
Yeah,
even on a
it's
more woo-woo note, Neptune in Pisces has really brought, yoga and psychedelics as healing and ayahuasca ceremonies, shamanism, books
yeah,
that
it's
are
really
channeled, astrology. You don't need
right.
the invisible realm is accepted. It's like it's perfectly acceptable to read a book that was channeled from some 10,000-year-old entity. No big deal,
Yeah, it's definitely
And if it be
a more
bestseller.
there's definitely been is a lot more I guess malleability and open-mindedness and sort of flexibility that people are willing to entertain. And I think it comes from Jupiter's rulership of Pisces, that people are kind of able to have, I guess, more receptivity to
Yeah,
this
so I
sort
wonder
of
how
thing, and it
people are going to
really
consume these next I'm like it may be an
yeah.
immersive experience with giving what AI
Oh, AI
technology,
virtual reality.
right?
Oh, that is the next. Yeah, that
Okay,
is the
good.
next frontier, and I think that
Yeah.
that is absolutely going to be, that's going to be a huge deal. Actually, you can track most developments in cinema to the Jupiter Neptune cycle. Anytime we do something cool with movies, like a new kind of an innovation, it's a Jupiter Neptune thing. Like when color first came to the movies, that was Jupiter Neptune. When we had actually that last Jupiter Neptune conjunction we had in Aquarius is when Avatar first came out. So I think it's interesting
That was
that
a
we'll be
big deal. That was a
that was a
big
big
deal.
that was a big deal. Not only was it one of the most profitable movies ever made the most money, but it also, you know, was 3D, and that was when 3D kind of got a resurgence. You
I
know,
saw it
then
in 3D at the theater, and I thought
yeah,
I was hallucinating in a
it was
very
amazing.
Aquarian way. I know. It was
It was
amazing.
astonishing. It was like entering the alien world itself. I mean, it really, that was total escapism, right? I
Oh my
mean,
God.
it's like a drug almost, you
So
know.
what? And
So
I know I literally was like, who needs LSD when you have
just
Avatar? You know, I
and
so
so the Avatar sequels are coming out, and they're all, and apparently the Avatar sequels are going to be based around like water. Apparently the next Avatar sequel is going to be all based around like water civilizations and diving and going underwater. And so naturally, you know, Neptune and Pisces, Jupiter coming in, you know,
guys,
sort of
can you hold off on the premiere till 2022? Because
right.
I really
Yeah,
appreciate the technology
there's
to catch up.
right. It is good. Well, I think that's that will probably be by the time that the next sequel comes out after that. So, yeah, Jupiter conjunct Neptune and Pisces will be, you know, the cinematic spectacle. You know, will be um, the new phase of the way people consume and what kind of things people enjoy having. It will change though after Neptune goes into Aries. That will be a
Oh my God,
whole
that's one
different.
that I'm like, what do you even? Can we just talk about that for a minute? You
You
know,
want to
I
talk
know
about
we're
that
on
for
the
a minute?
galactic glow up, but I really would
Yeah.
love to hear your take on Neptune going into Aries. That's going to
All
be so
right.
interesting.
Okay. So first of
Not to
all, to
bring us
establish,
down here, but this is just fast. There's some
yeah, right.
fascinating outer planet movement happening. You know, with Pluto moving into Aquarius in
Yeah.
2024, and Neptune, and then Uranus and Gemini. It's
So
just, yeah,
Neptune is entering Aries. I think it enters a
like
couple of times, but
2025, I think, right?
2025 or 2026. I think 2026 maybe. It looks
Mm-hmm.
like March 2026
Oh,
is
that
at
is
the
right. Uranus is moving to Gemini April
yeah,
2025. Yeah.
yeah. So
Let's get our Mercury and Scorpio
you're
hands
right.
going.
So the way that I am sort of looking at the Neptune Aries cycle, there's a few things I can say about it, but I'm not ready to.
Okay.
But as far as the Jupiter Neptune cycle is concerned, I would think that what will become popular with Neptune and Aries is more individualized entertainment. You know how, you know, one big problem that movie theaters still have is, you know, these movies take so long to make
Yeah.
that there are theories that abound, and then fans are disappointed when the theories don't come true, or there are tons of leaks and spoilers. And, you know, this is a giant problem really for you know, movie makers. They have to, you
Right.
know, go to these extreme lengths. So I think what would make sense as a solution to that would be to create movie experiences that are basically directed by the viewer themselves, you know, because the sun is
Wow.
exalted in Aries. So it has to do with kind of like oneself and the idea of, like, you know, being the hero. So I would think that, you know, what will probably become more popular are like almost like almost like an immersive video game experience, like a
Yeah.
virtual reality movie where you're kind of following a plot, but, you know, it's like halfway
You
between a
actually
movie
get
and
to
a video
be
game.
Zelda,
Yeah.
or, you know,
So right. So instead of yeah, so instead of like complaining about how you didn't like how the Star Wars, you know, movie went, maybe you could just be the hero in the Star Wars movie, and depending on what you
fascinating.
do, you would, you know, you would create the movie yourself in a sense. You would find your own story, and I think it would be, maybe might be a time when like video games kind of meet movies in a more true sense.
I was
Um,
thinking that too. There's a Black Mirror episode where this
yes,
guy
yeah,
goes in and has, like, you know, him and his friend are playing the multiplayer game, and then in the video game, one of them, you know, they wind up like going at it with each other, which is
well,
hilarious. You
actually,
saw that too.
yes, yeah. Well, there was that Bandersnatch Black Mirror episode where it was an episode, it was like a movie practically, where you could like choose your own ending, and you could make
Oh,
decisions through the episode. It would give you like a prompt saying like, do you want to take the pill? Do you not want to take the pill? Do you want to talk to this person? Do you not want to? And so they filmed like, you know, 5 hours of footage, you know, but as you go through it, you can
oh,
reach one of the, you know, you might only see like an hour and a half of it, so you have to like make different choices to see all of the different things that they came up with. So I think that this sort of more individualized, customized uh self-directed entertainment will be much more of a thing during Neptune and Aries. And then, since it's ruled by Mars, I imagine maybe that will be a big period for war movies for some reason.
Yeah.
I suppose,
Fighting, adventure sports. I think since people, who
yeah,
knows where climate change will lead us. I mean, we may actually, have to, have virtual reality take us into
right.
nature in some ways.
Well, and I think back to the previous Neptune and Aries period, and that was when the first photography was taken of war. That was the first time that photographs were taken of like people actually in war, and that had a big impact on the way people saw war.
Was that in the Civil War
The
era?
Civil War, yeah, that
Oh,
was
it
the
was
Civil
a
War because
Civil
Neptune
War.
returned,
Interesting.
right, and the other thing about Neptune and Aries is I read about uh, I read something really strange that people used to do in like the 1860s and 1870s when Neptune was in Aries, that they kind of created, they would erect these huge tents and kind of make um, these environments inside the tents that would allow people to imagine that they were in locations that they weren't.
Wow. Oh,
So, well, it kind of makes me think like it was basically like an early version of like virtual reality
totally.
almost.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So, yeah, so I thought that was interesting as well, because now we have like the technology to like take that to, unimaginable levels. So,
Which
that's
Pluto and
kind of
Aquarius will be dovetailing with. Do you think that's going to help
right.
with
Yeah,
that?
potentially. Yeah,
Wow.
potentially. I mean, Pluto and Aquarius will be kind of, radicalizing what Uranus in Aquarius brought about and what Neptune in Aquarius made sort of mainstream. It'll be kind of revisiting those topics that were kind of introduced in those eras by
hmm
those respective planetary
So the
complexes.
aughts and then yeah,
So that's what I had to
interesting.
say about Neptune and Aries. I have a lot more to say about it, but I'm currently
We'll have to
working
have you
on,
back for, I don't know, whatever we do next with
yeah,
because I
yeah.
really can't wait to hear your take on it. But this is amazing so
Oh,
is
thank
Jupiter
you.
hitting anything else then?
Yes. So then the final event that is hitting within that 5-year period is the final one is Jupiter conjunct Uranus in Taurus at 21 degrees of Taurus, and that is exact on April 21st, 2024.
Right at the
So,
end, huh?
so Jupiter Uranus conjunctions generally, because Uranus is a planet of kind of disruption and rebellion and innovation. The Jupiter Uranus conjunctions tend to be times when like really not just revolutionary discoveries, but like inventions are made that like upset the established order. Like or disruptive technologies, especially.
Mm.
So, like for example, like GPS was created, during a Jupiter Uranus conjunction in Sagittarius, and that that's allowed people now to go anywhere they want, even if they don't know where to go. Like
Uh-huh.
it's you're no
Never
longer
lost.
bound. Uranus liberates, so
Ah.
it kind of
Allow
it's
people to get out more
yeah,
into
it
the
allow people to do
world.
things. It allows people to do things that they weren't previously, in such a way that it sort of threatens the established order. So a lot of people have been pointing this Uranus and Taurus transit as being meaning a period of volatility for the stock market. There was a depression last time Uranus was in Taurus, um,
Hitler,
but I
some.
think I think this will be a really important period for 3D printing.
Oh yeah.
The inventor of 3D printing is Chuck Hull, and he was born at a Sun Uranus conjunction in Taurus, and he
Wow.
created his first 3D printer at the 1983 Jupiter Uranus conjunction in Sag. Um, so this will be a Uranus return of the creator who made 3D
So was he
printing.
born in the 40s then? So
Yeah, he
he's
was.
in
Yeah,
his
he's very.
80s now.
Yeah,
He's still
yeah,
alive. Okay.
yeah. He's
Huh.
still around. So it to me this is really interesting because this ties back to these previous Uranus and Taurus periods were times when we kind of we made inventions which made the production of textiles and fabrics easier. So for example, what was it, the spinning jenny, was created during a Uranus and Taurus period. A lot of people to make clothes faster, and
Oh, right.
the sewing machine invented during Uranus and Taurus period. And of course, the sewing machine, took it liberated people from having to literally hand sew, clothes. So fashion, that's totally a Taurus thing, because Venus rules Taurus. Venus is the
beauty and
fashionable
all
planet.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wonder
In a
what
more sort of material
products are
sense.
going to be. Like, I heard that they're actually working on 3D printing food.
Yeah, so I think, oh yeah, and the other thing that happened during the last Uranus and Taurus period was the invention of nylon. Which was weird because that was a kind of a disruptive revolution, because that basically allowed us to create like synthetic materials for clothes, making
the
clothes out of chemicals
gear
rather
that we
than.
have to this day.
You're right. So Uranus in Taurus, I think, is going to be a time when we are able to. I think it will be a time when people are able to maybe. I think by the end of this decade, probably we'll be like designing our own clothes and printing them up in our living room. I mean, it'll be a time when you can, it won't be a like what's fashionable won't necessarily be dictated by like luxury brands. It will be by there'll be like independent designers who become big because they made an app which allows you to
actually
basically
do
make your
that.
design and then just print it up in your living room when everyone
I've heard that I talked to someone who goes to Parsons School of Design, the fashion school here in New York, and she was saying like that they're already testing that out, which happened over the last year. Like, you can go in and custom make, it'll just knit sweater,
so
you get to choose a silhouette and have
like
it,
imagine like just being able to scan your body into the computer, and so the computer knows exactly what size your clothes would have to be, and then when you go to Amazon, you just click on the the design you want, and then it could print up like your outfit in your living room.
That would make jeans shopping so much less
exactly.
for many of us.
It would, you could just like make your own wardrobe, and it would fit you exactly.
And the whole thing is you can actually print it. You think that's true. People actually could have 3D printers in their homes.
You could just
that's
print
very
up your own
Taurian
things.
to have that home equipment that revolutionizes everything, huh?
Totally. I mean, there's actually right around the ingress, there were these demonstrations of a machine which washes, dries, and folds your clothes.
I need that in my life. I hate
right?
I hate doing laundry more than anything.
You need that in your life more than anything. Yeah. So I feel like that's Uranus in Taurus, like,
oh my God,
like full effect. It's very new right now, but I mean, it won't be like, as we go on into
my Taurus brother-in-law, my sister Ophie's husband, he's May 16th, probably right around the degree of that Jupiter
Uranus conjunction.
He actually does have a whole 3D printing lab set up and is really getting into it. So I'm gonna have to report this to him.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
Happy to hear. Jeffrey, you have
so there is all right, so there's definitely one person who we're going to have to keep a big eye on for this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. That's Mark Zuckerberg, who has his son at the degree of the conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus. And so what I think this is kind of an allusion to is the fact that, as Uranus has entered Taurus, I think that, since Taurus has those associations with like material value and money, that cryptocurrency, which is the disruptive technology surrounding money, will become a much bigger deal. And as of Uranus entering Taurus, Mark Zuckerberg's proposing a cryptocurrency for Facebook
called Libra of all
things. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So
don't try to get in our astro space unless come with respect, Mark.
Right. So, but I think it's funny how Libras were complaining about that, and it's like, I think Cancers have it worse.
Right.
At least you're named after a
dreaded disease,
disease. Yeah.
You have to be Jenny on the blockchain. Get over it, honey.
So, Saturn's going to be when Saturn goes through Aquarius, Saturn is going to be squaring Uranus and Taurus, and I think that this is going to be a time when the entire notion of cryptocurrency and like liberated money like this is going to be regulated. You know, that's going to be when we're taking a more Saturnian hard look at that. But when Jupiter comes to Uranus, that's going to make it go.
Boom.
Like,
Do you
that's
think
going
the
to.
Saturn-Uranus squares are going to
I think
kill
this.
net neutrality too, or regulate our internet use, perhaps?
Potentially, but I think that's kind of already happened
It is,
over
hasn't
the
it? I
course of this
know.
Pluto because the Ajit Pai, the guy who was the
Yeah.
head of the FCC, who kind of made the final decision on
Isn't he
that.
a Capricorn as
Yeah,
well?
he had
Sun?
Pluto conjunct his sun. Yeah, when he
Oh
was making
boy.
that decision. So yeah, it's pretty. Yeah, it's sort of to be expected. Um, but I think for Zuckerberg, I think it will mean that, you know, that it's hard to imagine how, you know, as wealthy as he already is, how this could be any bigger, like how what he could achieve at this point that would be even bigger, you know, than what he's already done. And the only
Right.
thing that would make sense is that she is able to get, you know, cryptocurrency off the ground. And I think it's hard to appreciate how significant that could potentially be, because right now cryptocurrencies are just basically speculative. But it's based on any number of factors. No one really knows what makes it go up. But if you were able to base a blockchain's, if you were able to base a cryptocurrency's value, like driven through the power of social connection, like if that was how you were able to
And
solve
if
the
anyone
equations, it would
could do
necessarily
that,
mine coins. If anyone could do that, it would be Mark Zuckerberg. And if there was a site that everyone was already on where they could potentially benefit financially from all of the activity on the site, then it would be Facebook. So, I mean, I
or
feel like,
Instagram, even people don't always
well,
often forget that he
he
owns
he owns
Instagram
Instagram.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he owns Instagram. So, you know, I think, you know, the Libra cryptocurrency could potentially then be used on these different platforms. And if, I mean, people are already, you know, spending a lot of their lives on Facebook anyway. But if people are actually able to make money from like posting a picture of their dog, well, then expect a lot more pictures of dogs.
Okay, right. I
You
know.
know,
I mean, it's so weird. It's like that, just as it like him and Jeff Bezos are kind of like these wealthy people who are their birthdays and sun signs connect to like some pretty significant events. And we do have
right.
all this Capricorn energy coming in. So these, billionaires,
Right.
I mean, do you think that the billionaires are going to continue to rise to power, like have, I think that
I
there's
think
a lot
it's.
of
I think.
connection
I
with
mean.
that in
I
the
think. I think it's. I think it's unsustainable.
mm,
I think there's no such thing as infinite growth. I mean, that's the only dark side of Jupiter is that you know, S- Saturn is necessary still.
to kind
Um,
of like
that
temper
right. You know,
the
you cannot. Yeah, you cannot own all the wealth. One person cannot own all the way. Like things have to be more fair, and that's why Saturn's the exaltation lord of Libra. You know, it's
yeah.
there's a certain level of like equilibrium that just has to exist for things to be like balanced and just normal, and sustainable. And so I think, you know, since Jupiter Pluto has those connections with billionaires and the acquisition of massive amounts of wealth, I think one side of the Jupiter Saturn Pluto conjunction that you could probably sort of imagine is that Saturn, in some ways, will be tamping down. I think on there'll be a desire to kind of establish limits on what, you know, people of extreme power can do. Because remember, this is a very
Right.
Capricornian Jupiter Pluto conjunction, so it's much more about setting like a boundary on rather than like
Yeah, Jupiter at
infinitely
least is in
endorsing.
Jupiter is in fall in Capricorn. I have to admit, even being a Sagittarius sun, having Jupiter in Sagittarius in 2019 was extra, extra. I think things got really big and blown up
Yeah,
and a little almost unruly in a way that was, I mean, it was quite the fascinating shit show, I will say. But Jupiter being in fall, meaning it's in its weakened position, for those of you who don't know what that means, it's, or maybe just like it's a little bit, it's kind of
well,
tempered. And I'm
yeah,
kind of glad about that. Maybe because I
yeah.
was born with Jupiter in Capricorn, but
One of the analogies that I use about Jupiter and Capricorn is for any people who are fans of Game of Thrones. There's the character Samwell Tarly, who was a very Jupiterian character, right? He's stout-hearted and a bit stout, but he's very wise and he's very knowledgeable. He's very scholarly. He is really optimistic. He's very kind, and he's a real Jupiterian character. But his father disinherited him and forced him to go to this place called Castle Black, which is a place where they have to guard the wall against the White Walkers, and it's terrible. It's like wintry there. It's cold. It's bleak. It's depressing. He gets bullied. He's made to fight, and he's not a fighter. All of the things that make him special as a clever, kind, compassionate, and wise person are not appreciated in an environment where you need to be strong and self-sufficient and cruel in order to live. And that is Jupiter in Capricorn. Jupiter is a great
analogy.
Jupiter is a great person in a crappy situation.
But he needs a little timeout chair, I think, after 2019. And so after his cycles through Sagittarius, when you get a little bit bacchanalian, it's maybe good that he has to tone it down for a year, right?
well, right, because it's almost like the things that Jupiter is good at are not good in this situation. I think that's really the essence of Jupiter and Capricorn, is that it's not that Jupiter is bad, and it should be noted that this isn't just a death sentence. Basically, this isn't saying that Jupiter just always sucks, because in the show, it's only through these hard experiences and his exclusion from being able to participate in his gifts that he's actually able to find an alternate kind of route. He's able to compensate for this terrible situation, and is eventually able to realize his purpose as the Grand Maester of the Six Kingdoms.
Right.
So
it's that correction, a little bit of a time of correction.
But it couldn't have happened. It couldn't have happened if he just had everything handed to him. He had to kind of go through what he did in order to get there. So I feel like that's another good lesson for Jupiter.
A little bit of a hero's journey kind of year.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Yeah.
Dark night
definitely.
of the soul, or at least just kind of underground.
This is definitely the winter. This is the summer of discontent as opposed to the winter of discontent, right? This is the
I think people are okay with. I mean, maybe I was born with Jupiter and Capricorn, so perhaps I'm just speaking from the lens of a Jupiter return here,
right.
But from the conversations that are out and about, where everyone's like, oh my God, when is it going to stop? When is human? It's like we need to take stock of everyone's been very outspoken on Twitter, on here. Everything's unregulated, and in a way that has become kind of destructive, and there's a lot of fire sign kind of clashing, and I think that winter time to kind of may help us to appreciate the resources that we have. We kind of culture of excess that Jupiter and Sagittarius can stir up, or that's already there, amplify, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think especially starting January, I think there will be as I've talked about before with Saturn, Pluto, the zeitgeist will be one of kind of fear and doubt and uncertainty, because, and I think one of the major reasons that could happen is potentially an economic slowdown, because that causes people to have to hold on to their resources and causes you to become more fearful for losing. It's not going to be a time for charity. It's going to be a time for kind of holding on to what you have. Everyone's kind of, on edge. And, it bears mentioning that Jupiter was in Capricorn during the 2008 recession.
Right. There was a lot of that.
Right.
Yeah.
And the other thing about that is that Jupiter, since Jupiter's like generosity and wealth and justice and things like that, that in some sense, when Jupiter's in Capricorn, justice or help is kind of given to like the people that it doesn't really want to give help to. The people,
right. Those Plutonian wealthy banks, government, bailouts and things.
Well, exactly. The bailout was Jupiter coming to the rescue of like the people who perpetrated it.
I know, isn't that
I know.
amazing?
It's like
In
they shouldn't have.
Capricorn too,
It's
right?
well, and that's one of the sort of more negative manifestations of Jupiter is like injustice. You know, if Jupiter is supposed to be about justice, then this is the last thing that Jupiter wants to do. But it kind of had to. The banks had to be bailed out if we were going to, not have to suffer a full on, global depression. So it was necessary, you could argue, and that was the thinking about it, but no one liked doing this. No one wanted it.
No one wanted that, and maybe that will spur, the first of the Jupiter, the Jupiter conjunct Pluto,
right,
like
yeah.
that kind of but the more philanthropic or the invention of these, I'm being very optimistic, being very Jupiterian here, but April, June, and November, if you're feeling the winter, like what amazing development will come forth from that kind of constriction that may happen, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, we might also see that as the kind of approval aid coming again to sort of like the wrong people in a sense. Well, and while that and I understand that like some people may say, well, that sort of betrays like a kind of a biased view. There's also a more positive way that you can kind of see this. There's a lot of instances I've been finding with Jupiter and Capricorn where there's criminal justice reform movements, so extending mercy towards prisoners. So these are people who have done something wrong. They have done terrible crimes even in some instances. And so, for example, the United States briefly abolished the death penalty through in the Jupiter Capricorn period. And so there was a huge outcry about that because they said like this is injustice because these are murderers and these people deserve to be killed. But then other people were like, but you have to be merciful because this is what like prison is enough. Like you don't have to commit the same crimes against the people who committed these crimes, like to be a really just society. So you can kind of see how
I'm thinking about that Jupiter Saturn, as they're speaking of prisons, like in Taurus in the 2000s was under Bill Clinton. He had his 3 strikes, and there's a lot of people who are in jail for selling marijuana. Now as marijuana is getting legalized, I wonder if there'll be sort of some,
forgiveness potentially extended towards people who have committed minor offenses.
Who've been locked up for 20 years.
It's wild, and I think that it does make you wonder if that might be a particular theme, especially because I've established that the Saturn in Capricorn periods are all about like the establishment of prisons and which makes perfect sense obviously for Saturn in Capricorn. It erects walls. Even as well, Saturn's in Capricorn now, and we have building a wall on the southern border. And
then the last time I think Core Civic, the first privatized prison, was
Saturn,
actually established. So hopefully Jupiter and Saturn and Aquarius will unlock.
So Jupiter, Jupiter. So in another way, that's another way in which Jupiter might be good is that it will be entering this, area where normally it's not expected, right? We don't typically want to extend mercy towards people who have committed crimes, but when Jupiter's in Capricorn, we may be more willing to exercise justice toward or mercy towards people who normally wouldn't expect it or maybe wouldn't want to have to, but just to do the right thing we can have to. This is why Jupiter has a difficult time in Capricorn, because Jupiter has, in order to fulfill its function, it has to do things it doesn't want to do. We don't want to give people, forgiveness necessarily, but then in other cases, we do want to give people mercy if we feel like the original punishment was unfair. So these are the kinds of philosophical dilemmas which I think are presented by Jupiter and Capricorn. The question of who is in the right to be, who deserves mercy. Forgiveness.
Who deserves to be liberated from Pluto's underground and prisons and vaults?
Right. So
Jupiter will have a say in that this year.
So that's about all I have to say about Jupiter in Capricorn conjoining Saturn and Pluto. Conjoining Pluto in Capricorn, conjoining Saturn in Aquarius, and Neptune in Pisces and Uranus in Taurus.
It's going to be quite the galactic glow up or blow up, or a little bit of both. But keep your cameras rolling, everyone, because this may be the cinematic experience you didn't know you were waiting for, right?
Oh, totally. Hey, that's something to look forward to. Yeah, 2022 is going to be lit.
Oh my God, I'm
cinema.
so ready for the escapism of, it's like, so if you really are getting like tired of this world, just wait till 2022.
Yeah, it'll be good. It should be
hilarious. Like, Susan Miller, the astrologer, was talking about Jupiter when we interviewed her, and she said Jupiter is Santa Claus. And right now outside of my window, it's been perhaps a bit noisy. So if you're hearing like little jingling in the background, it's SantaCon is going on right now. So a little bit like while we're talking about Jupiter, there have been hundreds of people dressed like Santa Claus streaming down my block in New York. And I just think that's just so
hilarious.
We've got some sound effects perhaps, but let's ring in 2020 with some good Jupiter energy for that. So Patrick, thank you so much for doing this. It was sharing your wisdom and your historical knowledge. Where can people find you? Where, because I know everyone's going to want to check out your videos and hear more of your downloads and your Neptune and Aries theory as it develops. Where can people check you out?
So my site is www.patrickwatsonAstrology.com. I have a YouTube channel which I haven't updated very recently, but I will be putting on more videos. There's a bunch of videos on there, but I will be putting a lot more on there. And that's it. If you just I think it's just look up Patrick Watson Astrology on YouTube. You'll find it. I can't remember the exact URL right now.
And you're on.
I'm on Twitter at @PWatsonAstro, and I'm also Patrick Watson Astrologer on Facebook.
Okay, cool. So you know where to find him. Just think of Watson, and that's all you need to know. No, and thank you so much. It was great to talk to you. You've given us some hope for the new decade. As well as some advanced preparation. That's the fascinating part about astrology. Like when you start to see the patterns, whether it's people born under the same sign or history repeating itself, we never know quite how it's going to go, but we can tell the themes, and that's why we're so obsessed with this, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and there's many ways you can use this. I mean, if you're a filmmaker with positions that correspond with that Jupiter-Neptune cycle, for example, like make sure your movie comes out then,
Oh, right, exactly.
And you could even look at that and think, okay, well, if I'm going to put out a movie in that year, then it better be about water and like some sort of underwater tale, because like Jupiter conjunct Neptune and Pisces, that's going to be really big. If you're you can kind of it allows you to kind of predict like what will be kind of the hot thing, and there's ways to take advantage of that.
Yeah, if you're a real estate developer or you're thinking of buying land, you may want to bear in mind that it could be set up for an intentional community, or maybe I know there's like laws that are changing in cities that allow you to put ADUs in your backyard or built up, just just thinking as someone who's gone to Burning Man 12 times in a row, I actually know the power of communities kind of sharing and building together. So maybe study some of those principles of the gift economy and think of new ways of bartering and sharing and creating those types of networks too, right?
Yeah, and I would maybe diversify your financial portfolio in time for the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Maybe invest in a 3D printer. See what that's. Invest in those 3D printer companies.
Or sell it all and put it in Mark Zuckerberg's if you can live with yourself. No, I'm kidding.
Right. Yeah. So there's, I think that's why it's important to know. And I think it's why it's, Jupiter shows where the opportunities are. So
great point. I'm so glad you added that in, because this isn't just about sitting there waiting for Jupiter to hit the planets. It's about like we are giving you, Patrick just gave you some good little cosmic secrets of industry here. So Jupiter is that
Right?
entrepreneur, abundant
Hey,
planet.
Disney, hire me, please.
They should.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You should be sitting there like, no, no
Well,
more Avengers. Let's do
well,
water. Yeah.
right. Well, I actually, I actually published a prediction saying that the Disney Plus launch, because it was happening during a Mercury retrograde opposite a full moon, that they'd have like a bunch of problems with it, and they probably shouldn't do it. But and it's while you could probably expect that a new service like Disney Plus might have issues on launch day, they specifically dumped millions of dollars into preventing that from happening, and it still did. And not only that, but people's user accounts got hacked and being resold on the black market or the
Wow.
dark web. So I mean, really a pretty bad time to release that. And
Yeah, there was
I'm
a
just
disastrous
saying.
iPhone release during a Mercury
Right.
retrograde
Yeah. So
too. I don't know
I'm
if you
just
remember that
saying.
one.
I'm
Yeah,
just saying.
listen
I
to
kind of
us.
called it. I kind of called it in August. So you
Are you
can
a
save
little bit
yourself millions of
proud? A
dollars.
little bit, just a little. You should be, even though it's like you don't wish that upon people.
No, no, I didn't wish it upon them.
You just want them
Well,
to listen.
right. Well, it's weird because in other ways they have really good timing. They released Frozen 2 right at that Venus Jupiter conjunction in Sagittarius. So
Oh,
that made all the money, you know.
right.
So they sometimes they get it right on, and then other times the timing is kind of like, okay, why? Why would you do that? So yeah, this is useful. This
It
stuff,
really
this
is.
is
And I
not
love how
just
your Leo ascendant kind of guides you to find patterns, perhaps through Hollywood and movies, maybe, you know?
I love movies. So I guess
Yeah.
that's part of it. But yeah, I don't know as far as my Leo rising is concerned, but
I don't know.
I
I
think
always
I
take it
think
to
it
the
just
birth chart.
emphasizes my sun, I guess.
Oh, yes. Well, that is so cool. Thank you again so much. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was great to
Check
talk
out
with you too.
Patrick Watson astrology.com or find him on YouTube and Twitter. And happy new decade, everyone.